let the night bend over me. This is not the world I know. This wind blows with a strange sense. I watch my garden grow, dark and low, its body bare. I dream I sink to the depths, watch the light above disappear. I wake with fear in my chest and feel strangers in the air. This is not the world I know. This wind blows with a strange sense. I watch my garden grow, dark and low, its body bare. This is still the world we know. The wind will blow the dead leaves away to let our garden grow. Tomorrow we can start again.
Tēnā rā kōtou e hoa mai nā rangatira huri noa i te motu huri noa ki te ao. Mihi kauatane a kōtou i tēnei ahiahi. Hoi anō rā me ki rā ki o tātou nā tini mate. Tērā o tātou kuia e takoto mai rei roa i tua whenua, kia koe hoki a hoki mana i te kuia. Hoi anō aru ake i ohorere ake rā i tērā i te rona tana hiki tōhi tō hina tana. Hoi anō me ki rā kua mahea te āhua tana i runa i a koe, i nā mate rā, mate huhua i runa i a koe, e kui, e te whae, e te māma, e te pau kanohi rā o tūhoi o te uruwera. Nō reira takoto mai rā i raro i nā kaukau tō tāua tipuna whare, tēnā hoki i a mātācho, pai a te motu. Ko koe rā tēnā. Ka tira haere atu rā ki tō hoa rangatira. Haere atu rā ki a rātau mā, nō reira takoto, haere tōnu rā. Hoi nō rā kia rā nō rā kōtou e nā rangatira e nōra mai nā kōtou i o kōtou nā kāina. Nei rā hau, mātou ko wairere, ko toi kai rā kau. Hoi me mihi kauatana mātou ki a kōtou mō tēnei rā. Iru ne nā kupu kōrero, hei kōrero tana mā tātai o nā piki o nā heke. Rarau mai rai konei rā, kia mātou nei, nei kai roto te mānuka tūtahi, kai roto te mira no reira chū, kia ora no rā kōtou.
Chū.
Yeah. So,
Dad.
So we didn't really get anybody there. Hopefully that we get somebody to have a
we're
bit of a chat.
complete failures of producers. We had some things lined up and then they fell through, and we had our backup plan and they fell through. So, hoi anō, kei konei tātou.
These things happen.
We're here.
Actually, I was just thinking I could probably. Oh, can you hear me? Check
Yes,
1 2
yeah,
1 2.
Yep. Checking.
Oh yeah. Sometimes feel like you're ignoring me. If I can just say that.
Sometimes I am.
Two brothers, eh? Chuakana teina, eh? Learn all about that.
Respect my authority.
Yeah.
So what
I
were
feel
you
like there
saying?
must be a bit of a lag, actually. Oh, I was just thinking, while Dad's painting as well, I might be able to throw up me working on the 3D model of the tracing of the Te Whakatumatuma.
Tumatuma? Yep.
Yeah. As well, at some point, well, as we.
Yeah. Just for those of you,
Yeah.
you may not heard about what's happening in for down in Wellington. As you know, that 50 years ago, of Ngā Tamatoa, the formation of Ngā Tamatoa, actually 51 years ago. But 50 years, we're looking at also around the petition with Te Reo Māori, with the Pitana Tera and the Teen Embassy. So we'll probably talk a little bit more about that, where we're heading to, and what's happening. So as you know, that we're no longer moving down to Parliament, to the grounds. We're not, we're neke here mātou, so we're going down to the bottom nearby the papa. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and waitere, and we'll add more to that, and also we'll show you some images of what we're intending to do. So it's going to be some exciting thing about, and remember those days, and to talk about those days there, to tell our story, our whakapapa, the whakapapa of the 70s, of my generation. So they're still around. And I'm going to talk a little about bowel cancer, and how do we avoid that, because over the years I have seen chat with many of our whānau that end up with mate puku puku, and all around that. So I might talk a little bit about that, add on to the conversation. So
Too much meat, Dad?
Eh?
Too much meat.
Yeah, too much flesh, and we'll talk about the food. It'll be really, even particularly our generation, and even your fellow generation, 40 up, we could be more conscious about what we put into their body. And hey, maybe a little bit late for me, but I'm doing it, and not an easy task there to kind of change your way what you eat. And so because I want to see I want to add another 10 years to my life.
Mr. Vegan.
Years,
Mr. Vegan, if anyone out there got your vegans, shout out in the comments. Hey, kia ora everyone out there on Facebook land as well. Hey, I see we've actually got our first comment from YouTube today.
Oh, I hear you.
Kevin Fick. Tēnā koe, Kevin. Don't know where you're from, bro. Boom today. Don't know, that looks a bit weird. Well, kia ora to everyone out on Facebook. Robin, Waka, Tangi Kōpū.
Oh, yeah.
Haven't seen you for a while. Kia ora. Micah, cool interview the other day, Matsua. Which interview was that? Oh, on Moana show. Is that what it was? Oh, Hori's on there. Carnivore.
Hori, Che Hori.
Norma Jean. Pātena.
Korero, what's that language there? Sound like a Middle East? Or is that my Japanese?
How's it, kōrero? Yeah, that could be. That looks a bit Japanesey.
Yeah. It'd be my hapanihi nephews. Kia ora. What's the YouTube, please? What's that?
We're actually streaming live on YouTube as well. We go out live on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. But yeah, that's our first people on YouTube.
There's a couple of people lurking in Twitch who are keeping quiet at the moment. Not really.
Not saying those Twitch lurkers.
What the?
Oh,
Little bird over on
There we
Twitch. Tenakwe. I think I got that right. Is Paleale around? Paleale. So yeah, we did actually put we had a couple of guests lined up. We were chatting to there's the Mana Media Live, their crew that we're live streaming down in Wellington. Because we've had a bit to say about that and had a bit of a kōrero, and these guys are always saying that they don't get invited onto, well, they say mainstream media. We're certainly not mainstream media, but we thought, maybe get them to come along and have a kōrero and see if we can find a way through some kind of common ground, perhaps.
it's a tricky one, because you need to find, I think it's a tricky balance to find people who are open to having a constructive, debate or conversation about it without kind of reaching into the, into some of the the disinformation basket. Or,
Yeah, it is hard,
so
but I mean,
it's
you
a
can
tricky
kind of
balance to find, eh?
Sure. I mean, you don't want to get into there's some things that you're gonna have to agree to disagree. But we're more interested in trying to find those spaces where we can potentially agree. I'm actually fascinated and interested around some of the thinking, around some of the reasoning on some of the kōrero. So that's what that was about. I was like, oh well, it's not like we're
All homes.
yeah. It's a very loose format, and it's not like we're paid off or anything. Or are we?
Or are we?
Yeah, so the invitation was out there. Then they kind of were a little bit, they were a little bit defensive. They're like, oh, you guys are anti-protest. Why do you want to talk to us now? I was like, oh, open kōrero. And they were just a little bit abrupt and I was like, oh, okay. All right, that's all goods. I did float the idea that maybe we do a sort of 1ZB sort of thing, what they call it, where they let callers call through, and we bring some people in. Let's send some links off on Zoom. Freedom fighters out there who want to put their side forward and convince us. I thought that could be entertaining.
Maybe what we do is get come into the comments. Let's see where you're at with your conversation, so we can, because there's definitely, we've seen over the last couple of live streams, people not want kind of degenerating into a sort of a just the repetitive stuff, and it's kupapa, sell out, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? So I'd rather we canvas. There was some really good comments in last stream, and that I thought made some valid points. It would be quite interesting to get them in there. You guys, if you've got your take, you want to put it into the comments, and if we think there's a space there, maybe we can bring you on.
Oh yeah, talkback. Why could I not remember that word? Talkback radio. Kia ora, anahira. Mark said that please don't waste your time. Mana Media, he did not have nice things to say about your dad. Well, this is the thing is, well, easy to say those things when you're not talking to the actual person. We're on the keyboard. No, I think he was saying them possibly live as well. But it's easy to say those things.
All
and
right.
It's like, well, okay. we're all grown-ups here. We understand that he might be a little bit upset or whatever, but bring your case forward and we can have a kōrero. It might be complete train wreck streaming, but they can be entertaining too. Always up for a bit of a laugh. Not that we're going to be making fun of anybody, but
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That was my point last week, the last stream, right? Which was the kind of, I don't think we should be kind of in a space where we're going into that place ourselves, and that we do give everyone an opportunity. It's like, I don't want them to come or feel threatened with coming on to the stream and feeling like the three of us are going to gang up on them. That's not really what this is about. It is about constructive conversation. What's the word that you use, bro? It's that
constructive conflict.
Constructive.
Conflict. That's it. Thank you.
It's actually an important thing, and that is the purpose of protest, is constructive conflict. There are times when there is going to be conflict, and you try to keep it constructive so that you find a way forward or some sort of medium ground, or else it just turns to shit and it turns to war, like over in Eastern Europe at the moment. It's not very constructive when you're just blowing whole cities up. You know, it's kind of the antithesis of constructive.
Yeah. I mean, all war is not clean. There's no such thing. It's a killing machine. One group to another group, and this has been happening for thousands of years. But the only difference about what happened during the big, huge conflict all around Europe and today, now you can watch war live, and then I think that came about during the Vietnam War, and they were broadcasting the war. And so it's all the real propaganda machine are really working really hard. They just use the propaganda. A lot of that using images. There's no one, how I understand it, always been something clean. Somebody will get killed. And then so, koera te huarahi. Koera te huarahi o te rao te pakana ki te ara o timatauena, whether we like it or not. A lot of your kōrero, our whānau participate in some of those wars. And so at the moment, really strange. You know, we just need to sort of analyse it and look more than by being captured by the seduced, by the propaganda and the propaganda machine, because that's basically what it is. They're trying to win the hearts and the minds of the people, and then people go, look at that, look at what they're doing. But all I do know, I'm not trying to say that, you know, with respect to things that are happening, it's not a nice thing to do. Even I feel I have some better understanding in conflicts, in the way the war is about, of power. It's a war of capitalism, economy, control, dominations. And so we need to be specifically clear rather than by the rhetorics of propaganda that's right across the world now. So everything just boom, boom. Sometimes I can't watch it just because that's all you see. Because I remember doing that, and I remember that was happening during the Vietnam War and all the propaganda. And so very small group of us that approached to the Vietnam War, and people was, look at it. So all you see is, the enemy, the Viet Cong, the Viet Cong are the Commos. Watch out for the Commos. Like even those kōrero came over to Tāneatua. Watch out for those Commos. They're going to come and rape your wife and kill your mother. That kind of rhetoric stuff. And so that's really what's happening. Is if you follow the propaganda machine, well, they're still doing it. So we got to.
It's not.
Hey, what's that way to do?
I was just going to say, it's because I've heard you talk about propaganda before, and it's not restricted to like capitalist, imperialist nations. The communists had their own form of propaganda.
I understand
it's something that those powers.
Yeah, I kind of totally understand that. But the rhetoric stuff that we hear that is in the Western world, Western society, and even New Zealand, well, we could have just stay neutral and not support any of that. But so because that we deal and trade with other countries, So immediately we responded by following all the rhetorics of propaganda that are happening around globally. You know, it would have been good just we don't say anything, in my view. And then we get hooked up to the propaganda.
This we're currently in a propaganda. I think that term has possibly been replaced with disinformation, or you know what I mean? Is
well,
that
that's deliberate.
possible? What do you think, bro?
Well, propaganda is
deliberate.
Yeah. Propaganda, I would say, is the umbrella term. Disinformation can sit as a form of propaganda. There's forms of. It's really convincing masses of people about things. One of the great propagandists, and he wrote the book Propaganda, was Sigmund Freud's nephew. And he was the guy who brought, who's the father of marketing, basically. Bernard, someone might know that out there. He's the guy who turned basically cigarettes into torches of freedom during World War II. When all of the women were working in the factories during World War II in America, and when they were doing, he orchestrated that reporters would be around when all of these women lit up cigarettes at the same time, and they called them torches of freedom, and then they did the marketing around that. He's also the guy who's attributed to making the Cadillac the extension of your penis. So making those associations between certain things, and so he utilized his uncle Sigmund Freud's psychology work to actually influence people, and he wrote the book Propaganda, and he was the first one who started to work with politicians basically to start increasing their influence and ability to influence the masses. Bernard,
I think it's
I can't remember his name. Edward Bernays.
Do you think it's more about a
sure, Anna Hedda, she's got all my words tonight. She was like, Talkback Radio, Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays. Sure, Anna Hedda. So he wrote a book called Propaganda.
Do you think now that's that propaganda once reserved for those ones in power, but now through all of the different
we've got social media now. You've got a
can
camera.
Now be utilized by the grassroots.
Yeah, well, you've got a phone. You can start a live, and that's what, say, if you look at Chantal Baker down in Wellington, it's a form of propaganda, and it's certainly. They like to say mainstream media is biased. There's bias on all sides, and that's the issue. And I think somebody else said this up here. Awesome whakaaro. I'd love to see a respectful tohe. Be good to see both sides without the usual repetitive kino kōrero. And I think it is good, because I think actually at the core of it, a lot, like what you were saying, Dad, about capitalism, about propaganda from governments, and we actually understand that stuff and have a lot of empathy for that stuff. We just feel like there is, especially around conspiracies and so forth, that resources and energy to battle this stuff is actually quite limited. So you got to be discerning about where you place your energy so that you can affect change and have outcomes. There's a lot of activists who are working inside and outside the system to get justice reform, to get reform around equity, these sorts of things. How can you do it in a way that actually has an outcome? I think that throwing your energy into a revolution that you're going to bring the whole government down, and I understand when people are angry and hurt, they want to do that, and when I see political actors trying to harness that energy, I think it's a misguidance of the resource, because all these people saying they want to bring it down. I'm like, well, what would you like to replace it with? And what if, this is my question too, what if the bureaucracy who runs the hospitals and the schools and things don't agree with you? Are you going to force them to agree with you? Are you going to force them to do it your way? I want to hear a little bit more actually around their thinking on how they would like to see these things change. Is it a transition period between systems? Those sorts of things, but that's what I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, well, we sorry, we in the 1800s there was a war just here, just right in this community here, from here in the 1800s. But we didn't have we didn't have all the media and so forth. And what happened in the implementation of the law, where they declared that those who the whole thing about if you don't believe in my way, so they actually created law that undermine those who, the Rebellious Act. The Rebellious Act is that those who who start system. And so they validated it by implementing that in Parliament. And they allowed it. I think the 1863 Rebellious Act was another form of abuse of the state. And the way they manipulate their way there and allow them to act upon, to use violence against you, because your tipuna did not submitted themselves to that. And so as a result of that, so all the people from here, Ngāti Awa, Tūhoe, Whakatō here, all around in the surrounding where we stand right at the very moment, were driven out. On the scam that they created back in the 1800s. And we're still dealing with that.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's collateral damage to ourselves. And we're still dealing with it even today. And we're trying to get a land, so we're trying to get some land there due to this conflict. Because we didn't see it, and it's one of the reasons I paint. And enable me to tell this story, to share the story of that, what happened, not just what happened right now.
So we had a question on here, Dad, about the painting behind you in orange. What's he te kōrero mo tērā?
Yeah, well, it's just a colour, and it's really, I know, I just paint randomly, it's just a movement in the colour blue and red, and just a building up, This is just the beginning of it. So part of the painting, you just put out the layers, and you get the layers. It might not be even that at all. Hello, by tomorrow will be something else.
That's usually the way.
Yeah.
It's true.
That's how it works. Yeah. So you don't know. And life is a bit like, we start with this, and next minute, we end up doing something else. So that's the magic of art.
That's a nice analogy there, Dad.
Yeah. And
actually, and I saw that. I saw there's I won't name them. Some people might know who I'm talking about on Facebook. They were pretty vocal anti-vax for a while. Very vocal on Facebook, and they're a person who does a lot of maramataka work and so forth. And they've really shifted on that for a number of reasons, but just talking about, you can shift in your whakaaro. You don't have to necessarily stay entrenched and polarized. You can, transition into different spaces, whether it's no matter who you are. So I'm not saying it was better that she came across and got her kids vaccinated, but it was interesting that she did shift and was quite public about it. And I was like, to the point where I think she's actually just done some videos talking about that transition from when she was very anti to her daughter missing out on some opportunities. But the shifting part for her in the video that I saw was when her father got the vaccine, because he was he was his own person, and he went and got it, and she went with him. And she was like, he didn't fall over, he didn't have a reaction, he didn't have a heart attack. And it made me realize that her resistance to it was actually out of fear, genuine fear. She thought that there was, and because there is always, when you walk out your goddamn door, a risk. But I thought that was interesting. You can shift. Like your work, tomorrow, your painting. Completely different.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing I think we're trying to encourage, particularly with this stream, is that, bringing on the discussion, pork bone kid, you've got the problem is, if you reach a stalemate, nothing happens. It festers and festers until people are sick of talk that doesn't walk. And being able to create a space where people can, with respect, get their point out, and for that to be kind of teased out and ultimately deconstructed to a point where you can find the spaces of agreements and the spaces where you don't agree, but that's okay. So
because that's our society.
Yeah.
That's the truth is, and that's why we have a system where there are different parties that lobby for, and the issue is that those with the most resources tend to have the most lobbying power in our current kind of capitalist setup. But that's the truth is, at the table I sit around at the regional council, that certainly you've got people who come from other communities, and we got to live together, otherwise it's war.
Yep, there's lots of messages coming through in the comments on Facebook, and a little bit of stuff happening in Twitch. Not so much on Twitch. Who we got there? Lazarus David, James Amadeus. It's a quadruple barreled name. Kia ora. Amos Makamaka. Arani Potu.
Matakino Hughes. Yes, I went with my daughter to get her vax, and sitting there I realised my fear was being stuck with a needle. Yeah, it's a genuine thing.
Kia ora, pork head. That's a flash name.
Pork bone kid.
Pork bone head.
Is that a boy?
He's been renamed Pork Bone Head. Sorry, bro.
Meet with love, my brother.
Yeah.
I got a nickname.
Just like Pale Ale. Oh, look, there's Bossy and Maisie. Kia ora kōrero. Maisie Rika and Bossy.
Oh, kia ora. Tēnā kōrero.
Yeah, I had one of our whanauna that was on the day of the police pushing everybody out of Parliament, and she was hard out on me. And kia koe harata, and harata kuhata, and she was hard out. But anyway, I sent a message to her and had a chat to her about that. And, I don't really know who you are, but I know you're whakapapa. But thank you for your kōrero. Thank you for your kōrero, and really interesting, because when people start throwing things at you, if you confront them on the sideline, so I had a bit of a chat with her on Facebook, and so thank you for your whakaaro and your apologies for that. And so, I know what's it like when you get to that state of mind, because I was like that myself. And I was like, wow, and it hard out. And it took me a long time. Sometimes you don't know these things, so you go through it yourself. So you experience this, having these experiences, and then you get to the state. 10 years later, I've been doing that for the last 20 years, making those apologies to people I see, out of nowhere. And they say, oh, aroha mai bro, mō te aha tēnā, oh, nā koe, no, don't worry about it, But I still need to come, to be in touch with some of those people, and trying to make sense of things that we do. Where we all go through those stages of our lives, and then it might not happen today, might not happen tomorrow, but it might happen a long way away, and then that's all part of the letting go of some of these things, in order for us to moving forward and finding another way. It's the reason why I'm here today, because I had to let go of a whole lot of stuff. And it doesn't help in your moving forward, and really understand, learning new languages, learning new approach, which is really important. And hey, this is why we're here today. and having those conversations. Aha koa wōna piki, wōna heke. And it's really important for us to do that.
Actually-
Tērā pita kōrero tērā.
It's quite a skill base being able to apologize, being able to find that space inside of yourself to navigate those emotions, to go, oh, actually I was wrong. I kind of feel like it's the same for forgiveness as well, because that can be difficult. That can be a challenge. It's kind of like two sides of the coin, apologizing and forgiveness.
Things can escalate so quickly, particularly today in the world of social media. Like you can make a mistake and boom, it's it's neck level, and you've been cancelled, and you've you can apologize, but then people don't believe you, and sometimes that's legitimate. It's a PR propaganda style apology,
Contrition.
and then
you have the public displays of contrition.
Yeah, and so I mean, even Dad, we were talking last week, and I was going, okay, chill out on the on these, and you apologize, you kind of go, oh yeah, okay, and it's very easy for you to kind of assess that, but it is tricky, I think, for people to make a mistake and then quickly for it to quickly escalate, and we've been seeing a little bit of that all over the place, I think. And so finding a way back, like having people be able to say some fucking full-on shit to you, Dad, and then for them to still be able to still leave a gap in the door for them to be able to come back, and find a way. So what's everyone else out there think?
Yeah, well, I know when the police commissioner came through home to our whare, and and it was a big thing. It was a big thing for us. I mean, that's the police commissioner himself, Wali Haumaha, and others there that within the police force, and just creating their space, even coming into the house. Even conducting in a way that we managed them to come into the space. So it wasn't just marching through there or sorry. So it was a whole process. So you fellas were there on their day, and and it's a big thing. It's a big thing for the things that happened in 2007, and some people didn't agree with it, and kai te pai tērā. But it wasn't really about what other people were thinking. It's what we're thinking about. How do we let go of this, and for the police to be able sorry, and then we go through that, and giving the opportunity for each individual, for Maria and others to just give their whakaaro, and for you fellas to give your thought around it, So that was a big sort of kind of let go for us, and it's good for me too. I didn't want to walk around for the next 20 years and feeling bloody fucked off about it, and carry that taumahatana around with you and become harehare and become pussy. You don't want to carry that. You don't want to take ownership of somebody else's bullshit, the bullshit of the state or whatever, for whatever it is. So we all going through all of that. Tērā kōrero tērā.
Yeah, I think that, and I mean that also, it's interesting because somebody, sorry, I'm not sure. It's a little further back in the comments, where they were talking about people forgetting about the way that the police dealt with Tūhoi and the things that happened during that time. So bringing up the apology, because there were two parts of the apology. There was the apology to, correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, there was apologies to yourself and other whānau that they had arrested, and then there was the apology to Tūhoi. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then and was there, and I mean, obviously that mamai's still there. There's a lot of, there's still anger and hurt. It doesn't mean that the apology has to be accepted. There's still the animosity towards the police.
Or
in the
certainly
community.
still, it's like when you're like as an individual, let alone an organisation or collective, just because you apologise or you say sorry doesn't mean that you're suddenly, all good and have no other faults. There certainly is always room to grow. And sorry is kind of an action word. Someone said there that it's used too much. I used to say sorry all the time. You bump into someone, oh, sorry. That it kind of loses its power as a word. But I think it's interesting as to why the police apologise. They were found to be wrong in law when they set up the checkpoint.
Yeah.
So they were certainly found to be wrong in law, and there was obviously pressure on them. But to get to that point where they officially apologise, not only to Maria and Ami and the other whānau, but to Tūhoi as well. I know there was the Tūhoi settlement around that time. Maybe it was on the negotiation table, but quite a big thing for an organisation like that to apologise. Kind of nearly unheard of. It does give me faith that given the right pressure and energy in the right places within our society, that's what gives me hope that we actually live in a society that actually has the capacity to make those sorts of steps and moves, that the police as an organisation, as slowly as it is, can move forward. That's why I'm skeptical of some of the talk of we've got to bust it all down. I'm like, I haven't seen examples in mankind's history and society's histories where there's been anything really better. It's always going to be very difficult to manage large groups of human beings because, just on a human level, we've got some issues. So I'm quite, I am heartened by this country. Not saying that we need to back off and that we don't continue to apply pressure. There's still, in the justice system, we can improve huge amounts. And you'll always have those guys like the Sensible Sentencing Trust and those groups that will be like, no, 3 strikes, you're out. And then you've got others who are advocating, well, no, perhaps we should be not brutalizing our prisoners and causing more injury and pushing them towards gangs. I think we need to constantly be striving to be better, but at least within the society, I think you can. For example, over in Russia, you currently cannot. In certain places in the world, you cannot find that way forward. It is like, do what you're told or bang. So.
Yeah.
Ed, you were around during the hippie era.
Yeah.
Right? There was lots of free love and that was kind of like a movement, and they felt like changing the world could be done through peace, love, and I mean that might have been pacifism and being quite closely tied to those there being a war in Vietnam at the time, and that kind of thing. But did that I don't know. I know a few hippies now who have come from that era who were, by all accounts, were quite hardcore hippies who are really capitalists now in their older age. Like I wonder, you know what I mean? Yeah, and now running hard out businesses. And so it's interesting. Like back then, that whole movement and that kind of thing. How did that kind of fit with what you guys were talking about, those types of action?
Yeah, well, there was a real huge mixed bunch of people. So you have the up and coming hippie, make love no war. That kind of concept. They were very clear on that. So also the music was implementing, bringing the music was involved in it. Music and art. There were a lot of graphic art workers putting sort of comic strips of on the walls as they were happening during that period of time. Then you had the old regime of the Quakers, and then from the people from the First World War, and the people from the Second World War. So there was still a strong movement of people from that. And but we managed to build a coalition, a group of different opinions, and on the same kaupapa. So we kind of said, okay, we'll put my hair side on the side, or we'll focus on that. So let's focus on just on the Vietnam War. So we'll focus on that. How do we put ourselves? So we, the Ngā Tamotoa, so we're saying no Māori whai Pākehā war. Then you got the other groups there, so we want to make love no war, and that kind. So you have a whole number of different approaches to that conversation, and I think that and we just need to create a space for us to be able to share those narratives in the way we see things. Then we can start painting pictures, and how we can work collaboratively. In my view, so and it works all right. So part of that, you building the movement. So it's not unusual to have 30,000 people just like that on the Friday night. Usually things happen on a Thursday night on K Road, and that's us, the Polynesian painters and Ngā Tamotoa, and the hippies, and then on the Fridays, and then you got the mass movements. And just from the trade union movement to the student against the war, and easily can get 35,000 people there down the bottom on Queen Street, and so we building that movement like that, and it works. It's the same what we did to the anti-apartheid movement was the same thing. So so we worked that way because we didn't have the technology that we have here today, and so it's still very hard to get people there. So I still take my hat off, despite right or wrong, that the people there actually mobilise people just to go to Parliament, and that's a huge organisation. And don't take that for you got to look at that seriously. That there are people there are able to mobilise people, whether we like them or not. And so I'm watching them because I see what's going to happen next year, because next year is an election, and see where these people are going to take their take.
Well, that's the thing is, within our society, there is a mechanism called an election, where if you get the numbers and you believe in your cause, you can rally the numbers and you can stand up candidates who are your leaders, and they can go in. And the thing is with our form of parliament, they are the legislators. They can write the laws to a great extent, and that's what they're complaining about with Jacinda at the moment. Oh, she's passing laws under urgency. Right, you can actually go and do that if you think you have the numbers. I think that's what was old Billy TK's party with Jamie Lee Ross. What are they called? Not a something NZ.
I don't know. Anyone out there can remember what Billy TK Jr.'s party was?
Anyway,
the Fringe.
They stood up people and they thought they had numbers, and they just, they were saying, we're going to take out the North, he's going to take, they just didn't. The numbers actually weren't there, and you can get fooled by going to certain places where you're in a bit of an echo chamber. The reality is that 90% of people got vaccinated. There's a large amount of people who are like, hey, look, this is just part of COVID, and we just got to get on. Not that there should be the tyranny of the majority. Minority, not just cultures, but thinking needs to be accounted for, and that's why we have MMP. If you can get just across, if you can win one electorate, and you get 3% of the vote, you get people in Parliament, and you can be in a coalition if the government needs it, and you can look at Winston. So it can advance party. That's the one. Pork bone head, bro.
Pork bonehead.
Pork bonehead. Yeah. And that's here in Aotearoa. I mean, I just like...
Oh, it's like if you want change, you know, it's sometimes people want change, but they don't want to do the work. They think that the spectacle of the protest is the work that needs to be done.
Oh, they want
like
change too, but they don't want to pay the price of change, the consequences. You know, like actually there's consequence to revolution. But I think I've said that a few times before. So yeah, if there's anyone out there who wants to convince me that there is a better system than how we're going to get there and how they're going to achieve that, let us know.
This Porkbone Kid is saying Māori are always at a disadvantage under the Westminster system, so the Crown. We got to fight everyone.
So I actually think we need to have
we
this.
got to fight everyone.
We got to fight everyone, really? Do we?
Well, you got to fight with yourself. You got to fight with yourself. The first thing of liberation, fight with yourself. Make change it in yourself, and you know, because we all colonized. 200 years of colonization, all that ki te wete i tō tūoi tana ko waikoi. And e mahi nui tērā ki te tuatahi. Little known dealing was down there. It's actually already in here. It's on our marae. It's in our infrastructure. And we allowed ourselves now, our ownership to our land and having become chocolate blocks, B16, B17, all of that kind of stuff there, you know. That's really what you're fighting there. You really, the conversation should be with your brothers and your sisters and your cousins, with ourselves. And then that's what you do, you know, the waves, the things that we need to unbolt. You know, we need to take some of those nuts and bolts out of there in us. We're at the pakana tuatahi, in my view.
If only we could...
I think that was also when you made... Oh, Dad, when you made the statement of you don't go to Parliament to look for your freedom, I think it kind of also, like how people kind of took that statement in various ways. And for me, it was like, it was also kind of ran into line with your statement of you don't ask the thief to, you know, how can you ask for the thief to, or pay the thief to give it back to you? You know, and there are these kind of it's the same thing, right? It's like you don't presume yourself to be in a place of disempowerment. It's going, I am this, I am here. I don't ask for my freedom. I am free. I'll take it. You know, definitely. I'm not going to ask you for this. And so I feel like it's kind of similar to some of the other things that you've said in the past, where it is less about being in a position of subservience, even though that's how the system is built. Yeah. It's understanding of ourselves as where we are as tangata whenua. What is, you know, how we assert ourselves, and that's a fact. It's not up for debate. It just is. So going in, please, sir, can I have my freedom? Please, can I have this? Because is giving them the power to do that.
I can't get a haircut. Yeah, I can't get that. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
I thought it was odd. There was when the Governor General came up to Maunga Pōhatu and gave the pardon for Ruakinana. There was a part of me that thought, why are we going back to the perpetrator to ask for a pardon? So we were there, we went along and I was watching it, and the Governor General flew in the helicopter, and she had her attendees, and I'm sure, I had a feeling that some of them were packing, and we had government officials there, and I just thought it was odd. I thought this is an odd concept that we go back to the perpetrator to get a pardon.
All of that is theatrical. I mean, they do that actually prior to going there. All that is what they settle with the officials. So they come up with a plan, they made an agreement, and then, okay, we'll come in and do an official apology down at the mana. All that has already been done. So you really have no choice in the matter whether you like it or not. Whoever your chief negotiator, whoever negotiating for you, that's the due process of this. I still think it's unjust. We actually don't really get the true values of apologies in there. So they only give you that a little wee dot. $170 million to me is peanuts. And one individual fellow, Arthur Thomas, who went to jail for something that wasn't really right, and he got $1 million just for one fellow. So if you put $170 million with 45,000 jewels supposed to be registered, well, work out your figure. I'm not very good at figures, but just work that out. Well, what did that worth?
1 cent in the dollar.
Hey?
Yeah, nothing.
Really nothing. Really nothing. So it's still unjust. I still can't agree with the Māori Party to bring again the return of stolen land. So a lot of the stolen land is on the free market. Then it's a huge scam. I mean, you can't find a really place just to stay, for your whānau, because people can't afford it, because the whole thing is a scam. Yeah, so I don't want to spend my time debating with me. Only he whakaaro ho tēnei, he tuku whakaaro ki a tātou, and I'm not saying that let's go and do it. Yeah, I think it's important for us to have these types of conversations and think about it. We're not too sure. Whoever listening to now, I don't know where you take this kōrero to, whether you just, we listen to Tame Iti and Toi and Wairere, and we heard this kōrero. But seriously, in my view, we need to think about it and talk about it. Because we don't know how the next generation can react to the injustice of 100 years. We don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to look like.
Tōmairangi said, if only
You think we can make it better?
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. If I have the time and energy, I'll go to fight. I'll go and debate. And I'll take it on. But at the moment, I'm over here. Kai roto I te ara o Toi. And kai roto I te ara o Rono. Kai roto I te ara o te ara Atia. And so I'm here.
And that, because people are here asking we take our freedom, what does freedom look like? And this word freedom, and I think of the way, Dad, that you've approached freedom, and you often have said that you got to be vigilant and actually the enemy within. And I just think too of this. I was listening to some things about Stoics. Here comes the bro. You've heard of the Stoics, eh, bro? So these are ancient Greek people back in pre-Romans Greeks. I think the Stoics came out of Greece.
Oh, was it Marcus Aurelius?
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius was the Roman emperor. He was like the most famous one, but he was actually following the teachings of these guys who came earlier in Greece. And one of the earliest proponents of it, he was actually a slave, and he couldn't change his situation. And so he used this practice of Stoicism, which was the main tenets is that it is your own choices, that you do not base your happiness on externalities. You base your happiness on things that are under your control, which is you control how you feel, how your values, and that's how he found his freedom, because he didn't have external freedom. He was a slave. So he could either live in a state of, like you were saying, Dad, a state of hara, a state of where you're upset about your situation that you can't change, or you flip it and you don't base your happiness on the ups and the downs. So you don't You don't move your emotional space. If something amazing happens, you don't go, ah. If something terrible happens, you don't go, ooh. You just stay in this, and that's why Stoics were like, oh, why don't they ever get excited, or, you know, they don't party or anything like that. It's because they had practiced the skill of their happiness not being affected by anything external. And that's how they maintained, and that was their freedom. And you kind of talk about that, Dad, when you talk about mana. It's an internal process. It's not affected or impacted by externalities, by anything on the outside. The government can do what they want. People can say what they want or do what they want. It is your...
The governments will change. It doesn't matter who you
Policies
vote
will
for.
shift.
You know, it's like everyone's mad at Jacinda now. They're going to be mad at whoever's in charge of national if they're in government. Everyone was upset with Key. So, yeah.
All those things will always change, and there'll always be ups and downs. And if you're basing your sense of happiness or freedom on those things, then you will go up and down with them.
And interestingly, and if Tame Iti agrees with you, or if Tame Iti doesn't agree with you, like how that external influence affected people's happiness around and opinion of
Or
of
the
Dad.
anger. Yeah.
And so fully charged them up, and then it was like kupapa sell blah blah blah, and then it was just like, well, that's exactly it, you know.
But the
They're
truth is,
allowing
when
that
people
to-
are saying, you know, when you're angry, when you're in a space of like, and you know, kupapa, it's actually not really good for yourself. You never feel
that's
good.
Puku stuff,
You never feel good when you're arguing with somebody on Facebook. You're actually, and then sometimes it's actually you're playing out a trauma from somewhere else, and your target is just a target for that moment, you know. And it's like you just got to get this anger out. It's not a good place to stay, eh, Dad?
Yeah. Well, all of that, you know, become a breathing exercise. You know, you go, you know, particularly with us, with the men, in dealing with our anger, with our riri, you know, and when we get to that stage, you know, and we get to the puku, it become pukuri, you know, and when you reach to that stage, you can't see anything. You can't even, you're not even ready to hear anything. It doesn't exist. And so you can see it in the eyes, and when somebody in a state of mind, it's a pukana eyes, you know. So if you got 10 brothers like that, man, I've been there. I know what they're like, you know. And so you kind of hypnotize, you know, and you don't even know, you know. You end up, so sometimes you can become porani, hea. We don't call it porani, hea is a moment. It's the kupu that we te rā hea hoki. You know, when you reach the porani, there's another stages of your mental, you don't call it mental illness, but that all come from the puku. With the anger, you go, it's become rocky. And so we really need to try and settle, calm down. And that's why I say, haere ki te ara o tūmatauena. So the marae Aotea is a place there, it's a safe place for us there to say whatever you want to say. There's no rules in there, you know. There's the rules just within that space, between that side and this side, and understand their space. And a lot of us need to know more about how te tino pūtake, what is it, you know. And so our tupuna created that space there to deal with it, to deal with in the process. Shall I go there and have this conversation? It's in order for me to go and do a haruru and all of that. We could easily go up with the marae out there and turn around and walk off and don't even bother doing that. And I have seen that myself, in my lifetime. So that's quite a common practice. And it's normal in a way, you know, like me using a gun on the marae. Because that's quite a common thing on the marae back in the days. But because the media happened to be on site with a camera, and all of a sudden, you know, and they're taking a shot of you become on the 6 o'clock news shooting the flag. But that is a common practice on the marae to be able to do that. It's not something new. It didn't come from Tame Iti just doing that at that moment. So if you know your kōrero, your whakapapa within, each of these things have been happening around us, and we do it. Koera te tino pūtake o te marae ātea. Tērā kōrero tērā.
Yeah, most people's experience isn't
I
it?
see there that
You go, bro.
sorry, but I think there's a tad of a delay. I noticed that there's comments earlier which were around. I didn't vote for Māori Party because they got into bed with the National Party, you know. And then there's comments about so Hilly's there saying Jacinda's sold all the land, and you know, it's kind of like, which one? There isn't one better than the other. I mean, we had foreshore and seabed under Labour. We had Tūhoe settlement under National. You know, so there's always these tensions where it's like, oh, then you got fucking Kim.com's party, and you know what I mean? So there's always these things that kind of upset people around the alliances, the alliances that are made and the concessions that are made in order to move forward. Is that and like I guess what you're saying there with it, just particularly, which is that it's easy to get upset about everything all of the time, but does it do you any? Does it help you? Does it help change anything?
Does it help your family? If you're an angry fella,
and not good for your mental health. And if you carry that, I mean, it's okay for a short moment of time, and then the next breath you go, and then you go, and then you slow it down, because then it gives you time a chance to process it, because they're all the internal stuff we are dealing with, and the way we see things, the way your eyes can see, the way you can hear things. Sometimes we only hear ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to hear another opinion without being too critical and be nasty. Like it's been for me for the last couple of weeks. And people just easily throw kupapa, you went here, you don't know. Well, I'm very disappointed with you. But that's okay, I can handle that. But you know, just to kind of bring in some things into clarity in what's really, because at the end of the day, for me, it's not really my problem. You have a problem. That's why I say it. Koe anō, tērā kōrero tērā.
Oh, well, who are we? Just sitting around. Is this
song?
program a form of propaganda?
We don't need more men on mics. What's that song?
Kōrero te kaia te rangatira, and that's really the pepeha in our space. E kōrero te kaia te rangatira. And whether it be haka mō tea, you know, hey, and we can do it. In the technology, we can do it now. So this is our marae ātea. So te marae ātea, ko koe kai kona, ko hau kai kone. Whakawhita kōrero mai, kōrero atu. So your conversation, we reading your kōrero. So kai te whai kōrero tātou. And so we're having this conversation, and I think that we should introduce the technology and put it how it fit in our world. I rote tō tātai o. And a bit like the kōrero about the Māori, where the Māori here, the Moriori's was here before us. There were people here before the mātāwaka. They are the mārangaranga, na nā pōtiki and the hapu one. They are the original people. Koe rā nā tāna ta whenua o kone, because we whakapapa to that. And Toro and them, or their Toro's dad, and they fellas didn't randomly turn up here and accidentally bump into this place, because they were already having those conversations, mātāwaka, until they come in the big fleet here hundreds of years ago. Yeah, so a lot of the propaganda of the Moriori, that they are being initiated by the colonizer to justify their the way that, well, you probably kicked at the Moriori, so we kind of come and deal with you, that kind of kōrero. Yeah, and that's a way, kari te tika wei rā kōrero. Yeah. Tērā kōrero tērā. And I'm sure if each iwi can talk about their tana, ta whenua tana, their connection to mātā waka and their connection to here. And, tērā.
You know, I think it's okay, my bro. I think it's okay that we come on here and just have a kōrero, because largely we are just having a kōrero. I don't think this is, we have our opinions, but we certainly, I think, at least open enough to shift if we're challenged, if people bring up other points of view and we go, oh, okay. It is a bit of a sausage fest with the three of us. It would be good to have more wahine. Or a wahine. I think, we certainly should be challenged on our male privilege or our, and I would invite some of that kōrero and that I picked up a term recently called toxic incompetence, and I've had to search deeply inside of myself as to whether or not I practice toxic incompetency, which is actually a form of manipulation. But sometimes you become so, you pick up these adapted ways, and until you're challenged on it, you kind of go, oh, maybe I am being a bit kind of toxic incompetency of, I don't know how to fill the dishwasher properly. Every time I fill it up, I make it a mess, and so, I can't do it. You better do it. And but if I actually really apply and I pay attention and I'm considerate around the way that I do it, I can fucking do it. I'm probably just being lazy and pushing through, and then it's easier for me to go, fuck, I always mess it up. And it can be a form of relationship manipulation. And I think in the past there hasn't necessarily been the vocabulary to articulate these kinds of things, but now there is. And so these sorts of ideas that people bring up, and I'm like, oh, okay, there may be some validity to that kōrero. Maybe I have to address that. So I think I would like to have a bit more of that kōrero on the stream. Toxic masculinity does not exist. I would argue that actually there's some, an expression of toxic masculinity is the idea that tāne don't get upset and sad, and that a form of toxic masculinity is, shut up, you want to cry, I'll give you fucking something to cry about. And that's actually been something that a lot of us have experienced. And as a male, there have been times when not being able to share your emotions has become toxic, and I think has contributed to our high suicide rate. So I would say toxic masculinity, there is something there.
Yeah, so I mean, but interesting here that, okay, let me just make sure I got this. Metua vaini. My eyesight's a little bit bad. I can't quite make out the macrons there. But it's called, so it's interesting here, toxic masculinity doesn't exist. It's called colonization. Feminists made that up. Now, there's a lot going on there, because it's like, Dad, you were around when the feminist movement started, right? and so this was also a section of the community that was feeling underrepresented and was feeling the inequity of their gender, and so what it's turned into and how it's kind of thing. There feels like but it's interesting because we've been talking this week about intersectionality of these different things. Here it's kind of been about feminist and colonization, and how that is a colonial construct, the idea of toxic masculinity. And not being able to have that conversation, or rather not being able to say, hey, this is how we've behaved as male, Maori male. Let's just kind of confine it for a second. This is how we've been behaving. There's now a term for it. It just happens to be a Pākehā term. And then, but because of that, we're not going to accept it. We're not going to believe it because of all of this other stuff that's happened to us. So we won't accept it. So it's interesting how how closely tied all of this stuff is to other things, so that it's difficult to move past.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, we got Matahi Nepia saying it's all in your head, don't overthink or underestimate yourself, self-confidence. I don't think any of us here sitting here on the stream underestimate or lack self-confidence.
I have been known to overthink stuff.
Sure, well, you know, we all do. I mean, overthinking is one thing, but actually reflection is another. I think they're two different things. I think, I mean, you would have experienced this, Dad. You have shifted as a person. You were, as a young Māori male, a different person to what you are now. And you have been able to shift because of you've been able to reflect upon yourself and your experiences and your behavior. Is that true?
Yeah, I'll just respond to on the conversation. This is the inana hine he rā o nā wāhine, the day of the woman. Down Arini Pautu, Women's Day.
Yeah, that was just yesterday, I think it was.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah.
See, this sausage fest didn't even pick that up or get somebody on from to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. Where were we? Come on.
Where were we?
The Rocks Festival.
Oh, Māori Maiden's got our back. Tēnā koutou. Are you talking to us, Māori Maiden?
Yeah.
Takatapui more accepted these days, and the new generations are evolving to be nothing like the previous ones. Okay. There's certainly a big pushback.
But
there's the Jordan Peterson and his group of incels, they kind of are referred to, where they feel like they have been so browbeaten by women that they can't be men anymore, you know, and I've certainly experienced, not that I necessarily, do I want to talk about this? Okay. You know, I've actually made the comment, I don't get the whole feminist princess thing. And for me, it was being in a relationship where I feel like I was expected to be, you know, I had certain gender role chores, like all the yuck stuff, you know, because I'm a guy and I'm expected to be able to handle that sort of stuff. And I mean, there's certain physicality things that I think come with, you know, like heavy lifting or whatever. But there were certain gender roles, and it was like she liked a man's man. But at the same time, I was expected to be also really aware and sensitive and considerate, and, you know, a real kind of, I'm not going to say sub, but, you know, there was certainly this balancing act. And I remember I don't get the whole feminist princess thing, because she wanted to be, I felt like, or she wanted to have, and this was just my experience. I'm not saying this is really what was going on. This is just how it came across to me. I felt conflicted that she wanted to be treated like a princess, but at the same time, she was a staunch feminist. And I did find that at that time quite difficult to navigate. But that relationship ended, and it didn't work out. But there's a lot of guys who, like, are saying, no, feminists are too much and I can't be a man anymore, and there's quite a big pushback against that. But they come across, in my opinion, as kind of really misogynistic, and, you know, that's where that song came about why these men on mic, and they start saying, oh, if my woman has a baby, when she has a baby, if she doesn't lose that weight within a certain amount of time, I'm going to be having a word with her, you know. And these are like guys in their like late 20s, talking like this, and publicly.
Well,
Yeah. And it's like, who are these guys? And they come from that whole sort of pushback. I guess we're talking about feminism and identity politics. It's like they've come from the pendulum swing and the pushback from that movement, is what it seems like.
Yeah. So Dad, when you were when you talk in your TED talk and you're talking about the different movements that were coming through, you know, and that was that, you know, I guess, and it wasn't just in Aotearoa, it was also around the world, right? So all these movements were kind of growing organically all over the place and gathering momentum. And so, did you find yourself, like, when you think back to that, is there times when you were challenged about the way that you might have thought about some, you know, the relationship between men and women, or the roles and those gender roles?
Well, funny, the funny thing, when you know, for me going back, you know, I left home in 1968 and going down to the South Island, and then and after 2 or 3 years away there, I was totally have a different view. In fact, it's the first time I ever had a voice. And the funny thing is, when you have a voice, people straight away make judgment of you. And so if you come to the village and you give this view, and the first thing you know what they say? Well, Pākehā ki wo whakaaro. You become in Pākehā. And they go, well, not really, because it's an idea that I'm sure that you know, a lot of our chipuna came through there. It's an easy thing. It's a, you know, easy. People not meaning that people are not ready to hear your opinion and the way you think. So when it doesn't fit into their own thinking, immediately, well, Pākehā ki wo whakaaro, koe nā tō mate. You know, and so they attack you that way. You know, so I kind of trying to ponder through that, how to deal with their kind of attitude in the way that we immediately attack to us, and because they don't have any right answer to say, so they go, Pākehā ki wo whakaaro. You know, you become a slave, you know, you've been colonized. But they didn't use it. We didn't use the word colonized back in those days. That's a new word. So the word that they used in their time, Pākehā ki wo whakaaro. And then I was given a view about, I didn't really agree that us Māori go and support the Vietnam War. E hara kau mā tātou wera pakana. That's a war of imperialism, of British imperialism, Pākehā imperialism. And even for me to say some of the talk, Pākehā ki wo whakaaro. You know, so I had to walk away, not feeling angry. I had to try and work out how to deal with these little types of conversations without people saying to me, Pākehā ki wo whakaaro. You know, all of that. So we have to try and navigate ourselves around the way we speak to each other, the way that we use the language. We rather whiwhi ko hatu noa ho ki te tanata, ki te whakaisi te tanata. Or the other word is, oh, you're communist. You know, you're either you're Pākehā or you've been hanging around with those commos, with the communists. So even interesting because people out there using that word today, oh, bloody communists. And this is way back in the 60s and the 70s. And I noticed that people were coming with their whakaaro now. Oh, yeah.
This is the communist and the socialist thing is, and it's amongst the freedom convoy people too, and it's that is the sign he tohu tērā that it has actually come from the counterspin medias and the from America. That's the Trumpism. That's my guess, that because that's where that language has come from. Oh, communism, socialism, the communists. You got to be worried about the red threat, and that's why we say, oh, you know, it's kind of right wing, white supremacist talk, that one.
Yeah, but it's what I find quite interesting though is that, you know, Dad's talking about how something that's not understood, or, you know, they haven't got a response to a very valid question. It could be about patriarchy. It could be around these things. Yeah, and it's like, and so what they do is they wrap it up in a, oh, that's colonization, and you know, and it's kind of, you know, in with all due respect, Metuvaini, that was kind of similar to that question, where it's like, it's this, it is, you know, it's colonization, it's you know, feminism and toxic masculinity doesn't exist, and so there's this wrapping up and sort of summarizing it and then going, it's the other, it's something negative, and then but what I find interesting also is that how we can do it when we're talking about Trumpism. You know, we'll wrap it up in, oh, it's anti-vaxxers, or it's Trump, you know, it's those fellas, you know. So it's interesting to critically analyze our own rhetoric around what we're saying, because we fall into the same trap
of just writing them off because
yeah, that's right. And so I think it's like when you start to kind of pull it apart, it is good for us to be able to kind of recognize those similar patterns across the board. All right, back in.
Yeah, Māori Maiden, there certainly is a lot of mob mentality that can happen very quickly on social media. Like, I've seen bloody Instagram, bloody pile-ons and Twitter pile-ons, and it's nearly like they can smell blood, and as soon as they just like, they're in. We've got, kia ora Nat. She's saying maybe the convo, Natalie Harrison, saying that maybe the convo should be about how we relate to our sons and daughters. I think that's very true. I think that's where we do form our relationships with each other, is in those early relationships. I always appreciated, Dad, you know what I always appreciated? That you would kiss us on the lips.
True. Yeah, it was very unlike any other father we had ever seen. Yeah, in terms of how we interacted with each other. Yeah. So no, I remember that. That was something also for me. And the other one I really enjoyed sort of growing up, because there was, you know, when you get to those teenage years, was just the, you know how Dad just falls asleep wherever. Yeah, and how he would sit, if going through a tough teenage time, he would just sit and fall asleep next to me, wherever that might be. And it used to be. And you found that comforting. Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah. So. Yeah.
I still do. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. It's just that when you do it. It's just that when you do it at the traffic lights and you're driving, it's not so great.
Yeah, see, I think you and me with our son certainly have gentle relationships.
Right.
You know, I certainly, when I was younger, and I was, I know that as a parent, when I was younger and my kids were younger, I was a little bit, I think I reverted under pressure to the approach of our stepfather, perhaps, or and I did smack my kids a couple of times when I was younger, and there was always that threat. Then after that, you go tahi, rua, toru, and they kind of, and you had that tool in your tool bag once they knew you were serious. But and I've got a teenage boy now. He's 15, and I mean, we have our little interactions, but actually never do we ever even get anywhere close to having a scrap or an actual real argument. I like that kōrero. If they're not old enough to reason with, then why are you smacking them? And if they are old enough to reason with, well, why aren't you reasoning with them? And you gotta just, I think I practice gentle parenting, I think is the term they call it these days, but I don't see any point in getting, if I'm getting worked, I do know inside of myself, if I am getting worked up and upset, that's a me problem. That's because I'm under stress. That's because this kid isn't doing what I want them to do, and I'm having a problem. So, like Dad said before, you got to take a breath and realize it's a you problem, and then actually deal with what's going on. So yeah, Natalie, I agree.
Yeah. It's definitely. I mean, it's a tricky one, because I do, and again, this is where my kind of heart goes out to those that haven't found that space where they understand themselves, they understand the mechanisms they can put in place, and I think generationally as well, because Dad, in your generation, we might have been to some degree, like in terms of, I never really remember you like. Smacking me or anything like that. That's not a memory I have. But there is other things that I remember as a child that are around your generation and your relationship with Mum, and how those things affected us as kids. And not only that, but the responsibility. And again, here we are. I'm gonna change the term from sausage fest to raks fest. I like that better. But as the males that are here, is that our mother had to assume a massive responsibility for two boys to raise, after they you two split up, and the pressure and the things that put on her in order to raise us and provide for us, and it wasn't, she was the one that had to enforce and discipline. And so that was, without the tools to be able to do that, to parent in the way that we have. So we have this generational privilege of being able to to have the vernacular, to have the terms, toxic masculinity.
Had the opportunity to do the work to identify that it's a me problem and not a.
Yeah, and this wasn't afforded to them.
Yeah,
and so yeah.
Yeah, no,
it's a tricky one.
I mean, totally understand that, and you go through that experience. It didn't work out between your mother and I, and dealing with those emotions, and dealing with those stuff there. I ponder through. I mean, look at us. Here we are, working together as a collective and sharing our thoughts. We all still have different opinions, but we're allowed to do that. And and it's a big thing for us in our generation, and it took me a long time. I had to, I'm pretty open about these issues. And I think we have to. We can't sit these things and put it in the drawer. It's all good, and I could have been a bit of an asshole, and during that period of time, and things I really wasn't too sure how to deal with those emotions, and I didn't know how to deal with those emotions, the things that I deal in having a relationship where with her and all of that, then I finally kind of caught up with it and let go of that, and in fact, and apologise for that behaviour. And I think we need to take ownership of those behaviour. And I learned that working with other men, going through with our own personal issues. And that's what I mean, that the first liberation is liberate ourselves. So we got to go through all of that and all of this, in order for us to. Here I am there, I'll be nearly 70 in the next few weeks, so life is just the beginning for me. Life is just the beginning. I'm at another level, another stage, and to me, that I now know what freedom is. Freedom is that I'm able to do the things that I want to do, and here working with you and sharing those narrative, sharing the space in our creativities, and then we can talk to the people we need to talk. So we're talking to the nation, we're talking to the world, and then this is our world now. So I'm not got left behind. So we're here together, and to me that's what whānau is about, in the true concept of whanaunatanga. And that's what I believe what freedom is. What we're doing.
Hey, it was interesting because we had a sort of a late belated birthday dinner with Mum the other day, and we're talking about your artwork and also talking about the potential of you two collaborating, on something other than the boys that you collaborated on. How old are we now, bro? 48 years ago, 50 years ago.
Some of us.
Yeah. And so
It's all gravy, bro. All gravy.
yeah. And so that's, but kind of where you're at now. And, it's about working with us and how we've all come together and we're doing what we're doing now. But then actually how we're starting to, look at how you and mum, our both of our parents, I mean, for me and Toy, that's not something that we've seen.
No, I
For a
mean,
long time.
our mother did not like you.
Yeah,
When our mother got angry, her favorite term was, "You're just like your father," or "I'm gonna pack your bags and you can go and live with your father," and that was the biggest threat. And that carried on for a long time. I mean, even when I got, in our 20s, 30s, Mum did not let that go for a long time.
Yeah.
You must have been quite the asshole.
Oh, yeah, I admit that.
No, but it takes two to tango as well. Mum certainly carries her own stuff too.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to get to this stage where, yes, like Wairiri was saying, we're having a belated birthday thing with her, and she's very appreciative of your art. She thinks your ira tangata are incredibly beautiful, and this is a woman also who has her master's in arts. She has a master's degree in arts. So she recognizes what you bring to the art world, and when we suggested, maybe there could be a collaboration, and she kind of was like, oh, and we said, well, actually, it's an interesting story, you and her, because she is a Australian, she's blonde, got hazel eyes, and here you are. And it could be, and I even said, even just around the domestic violence of your youth, when you were out fighting for te reo me, and Māori rights, land rights, at the same time, at home, there were issues. And that's often the price that activists have paid. And so it's quite interesting to have that dialogue potentially. I don't know. It may not eventuate, but
who knows? Yeah, who knows?
I think it will. I'm optimistic.
Yeah. I'm keen. I'm keen in anything. Because we had to be honest of our history, in order for us to make those transformations in the way that we bring new thought, new ideas. I mean, I didn't want to smack you fellas. I didn't want to do it. I couldn't get myself there, but I do still have some elements of violence. And I had to deal with it because I was brought up in violence. We get a smack. I mean, boom, punch right up on the nose. Yeah. Really out of their stuff. There's quite a common thing brought up in the village. Not only that was happening really at a certain part at home, but we were lucky with our nan, with our kuia, my mother, Korero. And she's a soul. Sometimes we have our own toe. And and so also the violence at school, in the bullies, being a little short ass, us little short ass always get picked on by the big fellas. So I had to go through that trauma, and going to sleep, in nearly almost every second day, these fellas are waiting down in the corner, just for exercise, and I didn't know how to respond to that kind of violence, and I kind of become breathing exercise, and for a long time I ended up going to see Mr. Black down the road. He teach me how to fight, and because he was a good fighter during the Second World War, he was in the Navy, and the old man, I had a plan, but I didn't share with the kōrero. But he said, "Me hari koe I tērā tana." So all of that we had to, traumatized by that. And even when I was going with your fella's mother, I still carrying with those issues with my pukuriri. I didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't like it, not because I just want to be an asshole. I didn't really know how to deal with my emotion. And it took me a long time, and I finally got it. And then you kind of let go. You let go of some of that stuff. And that's a big challenge, and particularly with me. I just talk about me. I was part of the Ngātoki Rauhi, was a Māori means group there within Mātātua. Now, there was myself, David Hillman, and Amo was in there with us too, Amo Makamaka. He was part of our group too. So the Bo knows about all of that too, Amo. And, in 60, 70 years later, here we are. Finally, to me, it's the freedom. That's what I mean saying what freedom is about. To be able to talk about these things honestly and to let go of those things. So I'm not going to just talk about that. Yes, I will talk about I will share some of those stories about my violence. So to me, that's what freedom is about. To be honest with yourself and lay things. You need to papa. You need to marae out there. And hey, I'm talking to everybody. Yeah, that's really, it's good for us.
I just see there Joe's Purewa. Auntie Anne was lovely. Happy belated birthday,
that's
Auntie
Josie.
Anne.
That's Jocelyn.
Jocelyn.
That's Jocelyn.
Oh, get Donkey.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw. Hey, that's so cool. So, I mean, that's the funny thing, right? So, because kia ora, Jocelyn. I didn't realize I didn't understand the name, the short name. But I was thinking about Donkey the other day and Porky, because I saw Porky busking in Whakatane the other day. I haven't seen him for ages. And this was the thing. And as kids, and Dad, you're talking about fellas waiting for you down at the drain, for you to come home. And I know because of our Pākehā mother, we were kind of raised a different way. And so in that, so we were a little bit sort of, I guess, softer is probably the best way to describe us as kids back then compared to our cousins who'd had a bit more of a hardcore upbringing. And so we were kind of like, we were always kind of the poofters or the sukis because, we couldn't.
Some of us, bro.
Pākehā.
Well, I was the oldest and you were the baby, right? So
you took the brunt.
I definitely felt it, and so, and I was telling your son, I was like, you see that fella there, Porky? He was the fella who was the biggest out of all of them and who used to stand up for us. He was the one that used to make sure we were okay because, yes, we were different and our mum was white compared to everyone else and we used to get a hard time, but he was always the one that would stand up for us. And I always remembered that about Porky, and so it was cool to see him the other day. We were driving past, I didn't get to stop. But no, he was the man. And so kia ora, Jocelyn, it's good to see you there and to be remember our mother at going through there. So sure.
Oh, Freeman's asking, how'd you go on Bull Rush, man? We used to did you used to play Bull Rush a lot, bro? Were you in the Bull Rush pickups? Like I was out there every lunch.
Yeah,
but that's the thing, right? I never played rugby, so I wasn't into that stuff. I was that was so the Bull Rush was always the fellas who were. I wasn't a hard dude at all. I was the musician, sort of chilling out. So that was that's where my people were.
I don't know why I ended up in there. I ended up like. And it was rough. It was hardcore, man. You're talking about 50 kids. And then when it was getting to the end, it was pile-ups. I don't know how they let that go on. But I think that's actually why I ended up being kind of quite good at rugby and getting the scholarship and stuff. It was probably from those Bull Rush days. Hilarious.
Yeah, man. No, I get it. I remember when the WWF came out, that was kind of a bit of a thing. Yeah, so it was funny that Bull Rush got banned. And then WWF came out and kids were just going down to the backfield, just beating the crap out of one another and pile driving and suplexing. It's just like,
Yeah,
Body
I
slams.
was watching that in jail in the yard during the bull rush. Pretty hardcore.
Oh, they played bull rush in jail.
Aye. Oh, in the yard.
In
Just
the
in the yard, you know, in the remand centre in Waikeria. And they had, pretty hardcore. Yeah, and was good. Just, you know, there's about 2 hours there of your freedom and from your lockup, from your cells, and they're just on remand. And it's a different setup altogether. So they play a lot of those. But most of the time the guys were stone ass. Yeah.
There's a lot of drugs in there, eh?
Oh yeah, plenty of it. So they used to burn. So I used to burn the, you know, the shaver, the soap, and you spray it on the toilet paper, and you burn it, to get a nice smell. So they don't smell the deck there. So they just smell this. But everybody know they were smoking. And I think they kind of knew that too, because it's better to have politics getting all out of it than getting all fucking worked up and having a big bash
Totally.
up there.
Not many.
So, you know, and so my job was to look after these little skinny park hair fellas. There were 2 park hair there. I look after them. They say, white boy, come and sit over here. You know, that's my role for the first 2 weeks. And because they're ironing them up for their shoes. The parker had the flash shoes. All those types of bullies, you know. So I know how to deal with bullies. I'm not afraid of anybody, only because I learned how to deal with bullies. And if I had to fight, then, but usually pretty good. And of course they don't trust me because I'm Tame Iti, been in the jail, and so they kind of paid their respect. So I kind of look after them. But they did a lot of bull rush in there. They were hardcore. Anyhow, smash.
That was the craziest Christmas, coming in and hanging out with you, with the kids. That was nuts.
it was surreal. It was real.
Coming and spending Christmas with you and Waikeria and bringing the kids in.
Waikeria.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, oh, look, yeah, you know, and the fellows who brought us our kai, and it was all that kind of prison, you know, where they make cakes in the microwave and stuff like that. And they had a band there.
But they had a hangi, didn't they?
Oh no, we did a hangi.
I thought they gave us
Yeah,
hangi.
they did a hangi, but there was, you know, the dessert.
It was a whānau gathered together. I think we had about 2 of those. And so we set up the hangi. And and so we're not having our normal jail kai, and so they had meat, pork, and stuff like that. Yeah, no, it's good. And I mean, hey, you know, it's good. You know, you got to make it work for you. So you don't get locked up there and feeling sorry for yourself. So going to jail, you know, it's not a good place to be, but you make it okay for that period of time. And and then you brought 660 there, waited it. So I remember we had the thought, oh, it'd be good to have 660 on their whānau day.
Who gets to go to prison and go, oh, should I get 660 to come to the prison to come and play? Bloody Tame Iti.
Also, I just want to put that in context a bit, and so and an interesting, again, sort of example of a backlash of something that was, the intention was one thing, and then how it was received in the wider public. And so, just for those out there, I used to tour manage 660, so I was kind of connected with the management, but this wasn't just about Dad. Marlon, who is the keyboard player, his brother was also in Waikeria.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's right. So it wasn't just about going there because Dad asked him. It was also because Marlon had whānau in there as well. Right. And so, I mentioned it, and they were receptive to it, and then the prison was receptive to it. We managed to make it work, and the boys did 2 sort of small 30-minute sets, one to the morning, and that was for you fellas who were the long stay prisoners, then there was the remand. And man, the difference between the two audiences was night and day. Like, like the
How, let me guess, was remand like?
Oh yeah.
Hard.
Yeah,
hard. It was
like
it was a different vibe. No,
like
they were still into it, but there was definitely like it was crunchier, and so but what happened is that when we left, and then we kind of posted a few photos on social media, and this is kind of what reminds me of some of the stuff that you've been getting, Dad, is that they were just like, how come all those rapists and murderers get to see you? And, you know what I mean? Like they felt entitled, you know, over our whānau, you and Marlon's brother. They felt more entitled to 660 than the whānau did. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it was interesting because as soon as it was like, we were, oh shit, we didn't expect that. We didn't expect people to be so anti them playing a show to whānau, you know. It was like, it was really, there was a bit of stuff there. So that's why I found it interesting with your stuff. Again, the sense of entitlement. Why aren't you in fucking Wellington? Why aren't you down here? Explain yourself.
Yeah. All of that. All of that. Yeah, because I saved both of those concerts, the first one and the second one. And, you know, the second one, there was like that, you know, and there weren't any cutting, anything like that. Yeah, because I talked to the boys about it. They go, how was it? And they said, well, we've never been to a gig there. It's just all me. You know, usually all the wahine over there screaming and yelling, but it's all of me. Yeah. Except some of the officers were women too, but mainly it's a male audience. Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was, and the other one that was what was cool though was, I don't know if they managed to do it with the remand on the remand side, but I know where they there were people who knew their songs and came up and played with them.
Oh, okay.
And that was pretty cool.
That's right. I remember that.
So that was. Yeah, and
so
there
well,
were
some of the guys, because we had a band inside in our win, and Te Ao Marama, and some of those fellas, because they have competition in jail, in all the different wins, and so some interesting stuff there, you know, that's happening inside in jail. It wasn't all ugly, but still very dehumanized, that the way they treat people.
Yeah, we've got to do better.
It had to be something much better than.
It's got to be better, because the truth is, these people, these people,
it's
you know, those whānau, they need to come back into society. They need to come back out here, and do we want people who are brutalized by that system coming back out here? There needs to be reform in the corrections sector. There's good advocates out there. Actually, we should get Julia Whaiporti on. She'd be fantastic to come in and have a kōrero about that mahi she does in the justice reform space.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, there
are. I just want to.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just going to hit some of these comments, Lance. The music that we're playing at the moment has been kindly donated to us through Loop Recordings. So it's all of the catalog of Loop Recordings, essentially. LAB, the Fly My Pretties, a whole bunch of stuff. So they let us use the music without us getting copyright free, so we don't get pinged by the robots. So I hope, and you'll see the songs pop up on the screen as we're talking. There was something else I was going to touch on here that somebody else had said. Oh, where was it? Oh, Hera, I really like what you said here. Healing our whakapapa. We are works in progress. Healing our own stuff helps us to not pass the trauma on to our tamariki and our mokopuna. So that's, I think, really kind of speaks to the kōrero that we've been having so far.
Yeah. Oh, well, we had a heap of kōrero out there, my boys.
Yeah.
Guys,
Can't
and,
wait. It's
Yep.
Thursday night.
yeah, on a Thursday night, and
It was quite a journey. I mean, we moved.
Oh, sorry, what's that way, did it?
No, I was just saying it's quite a journey. We went, we went into some places we probably haven't touched on before, particularly around toxic masculinity and our experience through that.
And there were some strong comments
Healthy
out there
stuff,
around,
healthy stuff.
that stuff being, invented by feminists and stuff like that. It's interesting. Actually, because we've got to get Nahui Murphy on. She'll be great to have on. And yeah, we have to do better as producers to get people on. So that's all good. Hey, I did want to mention that behind me here, this painting. Not sure if you can.
Show it that way, did it?
No,
Hang on, I'll bring it up, bro.
Maybe big.
Wait till open it up.
Source ATM.
So I'll just tell the story while we're saying it anyway. This photo painting.
You got a better picture there, wait, did?
Hang on.
Yeah, it's coming. It's there.
This painting here is. I'll come over this side. This painting, no, not. What am I doing? Get out of the way. This painting is going up for auction as a fundraiser for the Whakaari whānau. So all of the whānau of those who tragically passed from Whakaari. So this is Putawaki kei konei, koena te moana nui a toi, Motohora there, and then Whakaari in the back there. And so the tournament is tomorrow. The golf tournament is a fundraiser, and we're going to be having a silent auction for this piece here, and all of the proceeds will be going to the fundraiser. So that'll be up soon. It is a reserve of.
I'll probably get that up. I'll get
Put
that
all
up
of that
tomorrow.
up on
Up on the
tameiti.co.nz.
Yeah, I'll put it up tomorrow.
So yeah,
And we'll leave it open for how long? We're going to leave it open for? A week?
about a week.
Yeah, so it's up to
yep.
if you're keen and come into and check us out there in the next few days, next week. But I work on that particular piece of work there around the Mona, and you can see that transformation or what's up in Whakaari and Putawaki. So Putawaki there. There's an interesting story about those Mona. They were having a bit of a race from the inland and trying to race down to Putawaki, Tauhara, and all of the Mona were having a race who will get the further out to the sea before the sunrise. Anyway, everybody got caught up. So you got Putawaki there, Tarawera, Mona Whakamana, and Whakaari and Mautohora are the ones that are out there. Yeah. So anyway, that's really the whakapapa, because it's a response to raise some money around there. But if you look at the pictures there, actually there's some people there inside there at the back, and you'll see the people in the picture. But you will see it, and when waiting to put it out there.
We'll put it up so you can get
you have a look
decent
there.
picture
So
of it.
a good investment. It's a tautoko te kaupapa. So all of the pū there goes to them. Yeah, and so this is our whakaaro to that whānau.
Or those
Who's
whānau.
it going to?
There's a trust set up for all of the whānau who, they raise money for bringing them together and various things. So, yeah, all of those details too will be on the on the auction online. Yeah. So that's us. Cheer whānau, cheer the bro Ash. What's up to you and your little whānau out in Littleton, my bro? Miss you fellas. And everybody else. Kia ora.
Ai, nā mihi nui ka koutou e karema. Hoi ne miha tane kia koe taku whānau kai kona koutou Jocelyn. Me koe hoki Ash. me koe ki Amos, ko koe tēnā, kai kone koe iara, no reira e mihi kautana ia kōtou, mau i ora, kia pai tā kōtou moe, walai.